Hi, Earth Science kids. So I'm going to be providing you guys your e-learning day notes for today on the various layers within Earth. So we are going to start from the inside of the Earth towards the outside. So at number 1, you need to label this the inner core. Okay. Number 2, you need to label this location the outer core. Number 3 is going to be the mantle. Number 4 is your oceanic crust. And number 5 is your continental crust. So on your summative, you are going to have to label these various layers. And it's always important to make sure you're looking for the layers, especially in the crust locations. If you're trying to label the continental crust, it's always going to look more rocky or bumpy, how this one kind of looks like a mountain, a very small mountain, but kind of like a mountain. And then the oceanic crust is always going to look, in this case, it looks smaller than the continental crust because it is a lot thinner. And it always is going to be lower than the continental crust due to those different densities. I'm going to change my marker color here, and I'm going to show you guys that as you go into the core, okay, so as you go towards the center of the Earth, the density increases. Okay? And so as I'm going through this, please make sure that you are writing down everything that I am writing down. So now we have our diagram labeled. I'm going to go to the next page and start providing you notes on the different layers. So the first portion we're going to take notes on is the crust. And more specifically, continental crust. This forms the continents. So when we think of North America, South America, this is formed all by the continental crust. The main rock in the continental crust is granite. Or main composition, we could say. And then this is the least dense layer, okay? Kind of floats on top of those other layers. The next layer we are going to focus on is the oceanic crust. The oceanic crust is only about 6 to 7 kilometers thick, so it is a very thin layer. It is also relatively young, especially when you're comparing to the continental crust. Sorry, ran out of room there a little bit, but that's this continental. And then number 3, it's composed of basalt. So when we are doing our lab over these next couple days and we're looking at the different Earth layers, you'll notice that when we use when we're talking about continental crust, we will use a granite rock. When we are talking about the oceanic crust, we used a basalt rock. Okay. The next layer we are going to focus on is the mantle. Okay. And so the mantle is very important because this is where convection currents are located. Convection currents are responsible for seismic activity. And if you don't know what seismic activity is, it's like earthquakes and volcanic activity, okay? And so then the mantle also contains most of Earth's mass. And remember, mass is just a fancy term for like you can compare it to the weight. Most of Earth's mass is located in the mantle. And then this layer also contains the lithosphere. This is a vocab word, lithosphere. And then the lithosphere are those tectonic plates that we will be talking about. Tectonic plates. And then lastly, the various rock samples from the mantle are brought to the surface from the volcanoes. And I'm running out of room again, from volcanoes. Okay, and so that is our first little chunk. We have the crust, we have the mantle. Next up, we are going to be taking notes on the outer core. Alright, so within the outer core, it's very interesting because this section is liquid and very hot. Okay, it's a liquid and it's very hot. It is mostly composed of iron and nickel. So that's why when we're doing our lab, we use iron nails to symbolize the outer core, as well as the inner core, which you'll find out in a minute. And then C, this causes the Earth to have a magnetic field. The magnetic field is what causes compasses, if you guys have ever used a compass, to point north. Okay, and so then the reason that this, the outer core does this is because as the Earth rotates, the liquid iron moves, causing an electrical current. Okay, and again, this is what makes our Earth have compasses point towards the north. And then the last layer we are going to talk about is your inner core. So your inner core is solid, and it's a super dense metal. The temperatures here are super hot, and there's also very high pressure. So if you guys want to think back to chemistry here a little bit when you're talking about different states of matter, the pressure is so high in the inner core that it squeezes the atoms of iron and nickel so much that they are solid and that they can't move apart to become a liquid. Okay? And then the last bullet point for our inner core is it's made of iron and nickel. And again, this is really important to note that during our lab we are using iron nails to symbolize both the outer core and inner core. We know that the inner core is more dense than the outer core, but for our lab purpose it's a little bit more challenging to try and show that and model that difference. So this is the end of our notes. Thank you for watching, guys, and if you have any questions further on the different layers, please feel free to ask one of your earth science teachers. Have a fabulous day off.